Hello, and welcome to our third author chat between Audrey Glenn, me, and Diana Davis. Today, we're really excited to talk to you about Freedom's Ring, which is the third book of the series, which we have behind Diana and also here. I think we should, in the effort to make a full disclosure, we should admit that we love all of our characters, but Owen is really
David, maybe.
yes, he's very high in our hearts, and I think that's a great place to start. So why do we love Owen so much? What makes Owen so amazing?
I feel like everybody loves Owen. They really get that he is just a very special person. He's a very giving person and a very sweet person. And he's a gentle person. And, it's really great to see that in a society where we often value, violence in our, male role models. To see somebody who can be vulnerable and gentle, I think is really inspiring to us.
And he's been through a lot, right?
Yes, he sacrifices so much for his family. He's had a difficult life. He has made his life better through help from Josiah Hayes, Temperance's dad. He's been able to make his life better, and but he's still struggling. So I think people really empathize with his struggles.
Yeah, and Temperance, we meet her at a really vulnerable time in her life. I think she comes back throughout the series, which is one of the things I love about the series. So we get to keep seeing all of the sisters and cousins, and we see her shine a lot. But when we first meet her in Freedom's Ring, she's really having a difficult time. So tell us about Temperance and where she starts this book out.
Yeah. She has a crush on the governor's son, Winthrop Morley. And in the second book, A Lady to Lead, we see that Winthrop is really taking advantage of her, and it's a very uneven relationship. And of course, Winthrop dies. Spoiler alert. Winthrop dies in book 2. So Freedom's Ring starts a year later, and she still doesn't have any closure with that, and she blames David for his death. And he is, indirectly responsible, not legally, but there was a contributing factor there. He was involved. And she feels like that justice has never been served for Winthrop's death. And she's also very vulnerable at this time because she's 24 years old. It's marrying time. And, in this era, of course, Audrey and I were both married by that age, but that it's marrying time for her. And she knows that she needs financial security, and she's not totally sure where to get it now that her main avenue for that is gone. And she also, throughout the beginning of the book, discovers that Winthrop was not actually exclusively into her, and that's very painful for her as well.
Yeah, which I think we identify with her emotional pain and the tumult of these relationships, and I'm sure a lot of readers do as well. Just like you said, it's marrying time, but that's just a really, I don't know, tender age for many of us as young adults, trying to figure out, our lives as young adults and figure out relationships that can be really complicated. And so Owen kind of re-enters her life. One thing they have in common is that the Hayes family was not very affluent when Temperance was younger, and she remembers those days. And I think she remembers them negatively, except for Owen. He is a really bright part of her life at that time. So when he re-enters her life, she's not eager to revisit the poverty that she experienced, but she definitely has fond memories of Owen. Tell us a little bit about how the two of them reconnect and how they set off at the start of this book.
So Owen, as I mentioned, Josiah Hayes is helping Owen. He recognizes a special talent and a special spark in Owen, which we all do. And so as children, Temperance actually taught Owen how to read, and so he had that one skill. And then when he becomes a teenager, a concept they didn't have at the time, but when he is in his teenage years, Josiah again reaches out and kind of becomes a patron to him and plucks him up out of the stable where he worked, basically, and puts him through college, and then apprentices him as a lawyer. And Temperance did not know that he was working as an apprentice until the end of book 2. Like we see in the epilogue that they get to see one another. And she's kind of surprised that Owen Randolph grew up and is kind of hot. So not just kind of,
Well,
very handsome.
And she's worked to put the past, to not think about that. But has Owen forgotten Temperance? No.
Not at all. Owen has been in love with Temperance since he was 5 years old. They were 5 years old at the same age. And he has never gotten over her. And so, to have her come back into his life again, he's almost powerless he just wants to, he wants to do whatever she wants him to do. And he does believe that it will help him, eventually they'll be in a relationship. And guess what? He's right. I mean, spoiler alert, this is a romance. So
what about any iconic quotes that you have for Temperance and Owen?
Let's see. Temperance is, I always play to win, of course. We find out in this book that she's very into game. Well, we've referenced it in the previous books, but we get to see how she's very into games, especially games of strategy, like Fox and Geese and Nine Men Morris, and you can read more about all of those games on our blog. And so when she uses games also as a flirting technique. So she tells actually someone else that she's flirting with that she always plays to win. And then when she does win with him, she realizes it's not at all what she wants. Another one for her is, and I don't remember if she says it in this book, but she says it so often, but so one of her, trademark quotes is, well, it'll be fixed in a trice. So, it'll be done in a trice. We'll fix that in a trice. So I love her saying that. It just feels like her, like, oh yeah, we'll take care of that.
And I think one thing, again, just on the thought that Temperance, we get to see her really shine throughout the rest of the series. That ability of Temperance to make the best of a situation, or her just glamorous, dazzling persona, is something that her sisters really admire in her. And she does help her sisters, and she's really caring with them.
Yeah, whenever they don't know what to do with a man, they're always like, I mean, to catch a man, I guess. Whenever they don't know what to do to catch a man, they always think, well, what would Temperance do? So, and
ask her sometimes, or ask her how to dress her. Mm-hmm. Everyone admires her elegance and her persona, and they look up to her.
Which is funny because she's also the same Enneagram type as David. So maybe we're projecting a little there. True. You can't be David. If you're a woman, maybe you want to be Temperance. Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's something definitely, people with their personality types are just wonderful, just people to admire.
and then also Owen admires Temperance too, because he sees her fire and he kind of draws on that. Like he literally asks himself at times, like, what would Temperance do? I'm in a tough situation with a client who doesn't want to pay me, or isn't paying me what I'm worth. Like, what would Temperance do? And Temperance would ask for more money. So, and
in a kind of cool reversal, there's a little bit of a makeover from Temperance to Owen. He has not had the advantage of all of the social training that Temperance has had and opportunities that she's had, and so she's able to help him create more of a fluent projection, I guess, to
confidence
and just mannerisms and polite behavior that he's able to present himself in society in a way that really helps him to build his legal practice and get more clients. And so, they're very good for each other.
Did Owen's iconic quotes, and so one of his iconic quotes is, well, I could just work a little bit harder, which is, a misbelief that Audrey and I kind of share, but I can always work a little harder. I can make this happen. I could just work a little harder.
And it's poignant coming from Owen because, I mean, he really did come from an impoverished background.
He's done nothing but work. Like, really, you can't work any harder, honey.
Right. And when he works harder, we mean he is like working without sleep to put food on the table. And so, it's not just him being a workaholic. Like, he really just wants to provide a good life for his mother and sisters, and he's been working since he was small to try and help them,
and to help other people too, because one of the things that he wants to work harder at is helping other impoverished people who have trouble with the law, often in this situation. So he
takes on a lot of cases for indigent people who really need him and need his services, but can't pay him, or certainly can't pay what he deserves and what he needs to live off of. And so that's just a huge tension for him, and we felt for him and love him and his goodness is definitely rewarded throughout the series, and other
Yes.
people see that. And that's one thing I just, again, I love about being able to tell stories in a serial format like this, is that we can see some things continue to unfold for these characters, and
and they get their just rewards.
we mostly good things with a few exceptions.
And only when they deserve it. So, I mean, mostly, and some just for historical accuracy, because, you know, nobody gets everything to go great.
No, yeah, and that's something, you know, it's a war, and difficult things do happen to these characters and their families. But
and speaking of difficult times, the other iconic quote that I think of for Owen, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but you're gonna have to read to see the context, is when he has the strength to say goodbye, Temperance, and walk away from her.
Yeah, and that in the end, you know, what starts off as a crush really does end up developing into, you know, two adults who really love each other for good reason, and that's a really sweet thing to see. Why do you think they're a perfect couple for one another?
Well, like I said, Owen really looks up to Temperance. He wants to borrow her fire and be a little more like her. And then for Temperance, she can appreciate how caring he is without, well, maybe not, but she can appreciate how caring he is, and she really sees that she looks beyond the outward things, which is not very much like her, but she can see who he really is because they've known each other for so long. And he does the same for her. He is able to look past, you know, how rich she is and how rich she wants to be, and to stay, how she wants to stay financially secure, and he knows who she is underneath all that. Which is really what we all want. We want to be seen like that.
Yeah, Temperance feels safe with Owen to, you know, be her vulnerable self, which is, again, like what you just said, it's what everyone wants, and definitely what the main characters of any romance are looking for, is that chance to kind of put away the facade and be safe to reveal who they really are. And I think that's something really sweet about Temperance and Owen. And Temperance is Owen's biggest cheerleader. If we talk about iconic quotes, Temperance repeatedly she's
Owen
obsessed
Randolph
with
says.
Owen.
Owen says.
She's
throughout the rest of the series, like when Patience is down, she's like, well, Owen says you're a good lawyer. Like, Patience already knows that, but like,
according to Owen
says.
Yeah, Owen's opinions and character and abilities are a huge matter of pride for Temperance. And I think it's really sweet, actually, because, you know, Temperance is the one who's maybe a little more flashy, and Owen is very humble. And so Temperance kind of takes it upon herself to be Owen's biggest cheerleader. And
Owen
you know,
says Owen's the best. So, and maybe Temperance is speaking for us there a little bit.
Yes, definitely. And he well deserves all of her praise, and would never ever promote himself in that way. So that's something sweet that Owen receives from Temperance, is that she's a big fan and lets everyone else around her know that.
Take charge, all kinds.
So let's talk about research. And just to start off, I think people are always really curious about the co-authorship process when we talk to them about how we've written a co-authored series. And this is a book definitely where, you know, I think we really started to, well, from the beginning, we've had to always have constant conversation about it. But, you know, I really handed you off a set of characters that you had to.
The first two books we wrote parallel without showing one another, really. Like, we gave each other peeks maybe halfway through. And it was kind of amazing that we like wrote the same David, honestly.
Yeah, similar personalities. But those two books do take place like 3 years apart. So there's, you know, there was room to the narrative doesn't overlap very tightly at all, but really we had a little bit more play there. But these books about the sisters take place over a much shorter time period, and they're also about sisters who live together, and with shared parents, and so it just became really important to, you know, make sure that there was a lot of consistency. And like I said, I kind of handed you this characters that you had to take and do a lot with. So tell us a little bit about that process.
So Audrey was like, so I think I had the idea that she was obsessed with someone, and I think I might have said the governor's son, and then Audrey was like, oh, well, I'm killing him. So that kind of like threw my plans up in the air. We got better about not doing that to one another sometimes. And sometimes, you know, it's fun to challenge one another. But we, after the first 2 books, we started sharing like every chapter or so. We would just share with one another, and sometimes for fun commentary, and sometimes feedback and help. We would brainstorm all the time, like, I need my character to do this. I'm not sure what to do. I don't know why this person would do this. And we do that with our other works too that are not co-authored, or I do anyway. And what else? And we share our research all the time because it's just so fascinating. So
and we did start off when we first conceptualized of the series, like we talked about the sisters, we gave them general personalities, and we also talked about, you know, anyone that has multiple siblings will tell you that you have your siblings, they have a personality, but the way that different siblings interact is not always the same. And so from the beginning, we talked about the fact that you're going to have some sisters that may be close, some sisters that might struggle a little bit. How are these characters going to interact with each other? So we kind of had that in the back of our minds. And then as we were able to share things, you know, we could say, okay, I see this. I'll be honest, I've been pretty shocked at the number of times when we've both written something that we didn't talk about previously, and it turned out to be the same wavelength.
And so we haven't discussed, because we did from the beginning. We knew like who all the we knew obviously who all the heroines were going to be. We knew who the heroes were, and we knew how they were going to interact. And then we, you know, we got into the books, and we sometimes had to twist things on their head. So we gave each other plenty of challenges, but we had a lot of fun. And yeah, just constant communication and constant sharing of what we have, and adjusting, like, and whenever, especially like in Temperance and future books, when Audrey writes Temperance, you know, I like feel like I always have free reign to say, well, she would say it this way. So I think vice versa.
Definitely the person whose main characters, you know, gets the final say on, is this true to the essence of this character, because, you know, we want to make sure it's consistent with what we had thought of. But writing with you is my favorite part. Like, that's my favorite part of this whole process. Like, it's really fun. And I think when people have asked me about it, I don't know, I'm sure that other co-authorships work differently, but we've been best friends for a long time, and so that helps a lot.
As teenagers, we joked that we were, you know, how people would call us 2 peas in a pod. We would say that we were 1 pea in 2 pods. So
yeah, and yeah, so we probably owe a lot of our being on the same wavelengths to that. But also, it's just really fun. I think we enjoy the process of it, and so that makes it entertaining and enjoyable even before we get to, you know, the end of the process of publication. But what other research did you do for this book? The events of the novel take place in the lead up to declaring revolution. So if you think about the historical events,
late 1774 to 1775. So as I mentioned already, one of the historical events that is happening at the same time is the First Continental Congress, which is in the fall of 1774. And David and Josiah are both delegates, and they have a lot of conflict because they disagree with how they think the country's future should go. And David has a lot of inner conflict because he knows that he was elected or chosen for this position for one reason, and it's because they think that he's going to vote one way, but that's not how he actually feels. And so he has a lot of inner conflict about what he should do in that case. We also get to see there's a little bit of cameo by George Washington. They talk about Patrick Henry and some of the other delegates to the first Congress. And then the other big historical thing in this is the Philadelphia Light Horse, or the First City Troop of Cavalry, that is founded in November 1774. And we've added David as a founding member. And one of the cool things is that by the time the war actually starts, the initial captain of the troop, Abraham Marco, he is a Danish citizen, and the King of Denmark declared them neutral and said that their citizens could not fight. He wanted to remain a Danish citizen, so he had to resign from the troop, so he became kind of their honorary captain. And then their first lieutenant became a loyalist. So the person who was their second lieutenant becomes the captain, and then they had a second lieutenant, but they never had a first lieutenant for several years after, during the beginning of the revolution. And so that just provided a slot for David to move right in without having to displace a historical person. So.
And the Philly Light Horse plays a big role in history, but also in our first Christmas book.
Yes.
So
yes, and several places in the series. We are having a future story that will come out that will involve them as well, which I need to write. But for the Christmas book, I had to research what the Light Horse did at the Battle of Trenton, and I read every extant source on this from the Light Horse, David Fisher Hackett, Fisher, I forget, like all these historians. And so for a while, I was probably the foremost expert in the world on the Philadelphia Light Horse at the first and second, no, just first Battle of Trenton. So, and when
we were randomly walking, well, not randomly, we were deliberately going to visit the Powell House and randomly saw the Philly Light Horse flag, and we're very excited. It was Philadelphia and an 18th century section, so it's not the most random place to see that flag, but we asked our docent about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what he just,
like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just my neighbor. I don't know.
Yeah, just a random neighbor was hanging the flag, and we couldn't get a straight answer. But we were super excited because
we should have gone and knocked on his door. That's what we should have done.
The Philly Light Horse.
We were excited to walk into the Museum of the American Revolution, and in their lobby they have a display case that has a little diorama, and we've got pictures we can share of this. Or actually, I think I have them on the blog. That has a diorama of the Philadelphia Light Horse after the surrender at the First Battle of Trenton, marching through the streets of Trenton. So, and
they still exist today.
Yes, they do. They're part of the Pennsylvania National Guard now. So, and it's kind of they do have active service tours, but they are also a very, at the time they were a gentleman's troop, and they still kind of are. The reason that they were founded is because these people all had horses already, so they decided to be cavalry, and so they were very much. They didn't do a lot of active fighting. They were George Washington's bodyguard. At the end of book 4, Owen and David, because Owen also joins. Spoiler, but they leave to escort George Washington to the army, who's been named commander-in-chief of the army, to the main body of the army, and they take him as far as New York, and then he has to continue on to Boston from there. But they're very much, and then that's what they're doing at the Battle of Trenton, is they are with George Washington on the bluff overlooking the town. It's a large hill, it's not a mountain or anything, but they are so while they are very much involved in these parts of history, they are not infantry down there dirty fighting. They're the rich people in the city who wanted to do something, and so they're kind of a silk stocking troop. So
yeah, one of the very many. Well, we love Freedom's Ring. I feel like it really kickstarts the stories of the Hayes sisters, as they were children and teens in the first couple of books, and now we're really getting to see their lives and emerging into adulthood and their romances. So is there anything that what do you pull away from this book in particular? What do you love about it and hope that other people will enjoy?
Owen, David, Owen.
Always.
Just, aside from those, always. I love their romance story. I love both of the characters' arcs, how they learn what they really need in life. Temperance thinks that she needs to be financially secure, and to be financially secure, she needs to find a rich husband. And she realizes that love is more important than that. And Owen realizes that he can stand up for himself, that he has worth, and they both come to become more, I don't want to say revolutionaries or rebels, but they become more Whigs. I don't know. They are drawn to this side of the people who are realizing that they are going to have to break with Britain, and that the legal rights of British citizens themselves are being abrogated, and they need to take action. They can't just sit there and let other people dictate their lives.
Yeah, that's one of the great things we loved exploring in this series, is just how different people, just like today, had different opinions about what was going on and what they thought should happen. And Owen and Temperance are maybe represent people who are, you know, initially seeing this conflict unfolding and realizing, you know, they feel very strongly about the cause of American freedom.
Definitely. So yeah, they're kind of the people who at first are like, I don't know what it has to do with me, who then become dedicated to the cause of freedom. And honestly, probably the largest single group of people in the colonies at the time are the people who said, I don't know what it has to do with me.
Right.
So.
They're just trying to live their lives, and, you know, pretty soon, I think the events, you know, that happened at Boston changed things for a lot of people. But initially, you know, someone working hard like Owen maybe didn't see the connection between what wealthier people who had more free time to debate these things, what did it have to do with them?
Yep. And he gets to see in his clients, he sees the corruption of the legal system, and he draws the parallels between what's going on with Parliament and their laws and the way that the Crown Courts are treating people who can't afford good representation.
Yeah. Well, we hope people love the book and again love the series and get to see this couple. They definitely come back in every single book, and I love the 8th book has what I think is a really sweet resolution for them. And so we hope people enjoy that.
We get their, I don't know, they get their happy ending. So
they get their very happy ending. So all right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.